Okay.
All right, I will get started. Liam's gone, but he'll be right back. So I would like to call to order the December 6th,
For everyone.
2023 Plan
Start the
Commission
meeting.
meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
All right. Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
Brink.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Kays.
Here.
And Dolly Inspire absent, and Colhane is absent for the moment, but will be joining us here shortly.
Yep, I'll let the record know when he's back. Third item on the agenda is the invitation for public comments submittal. Is there anything not on the agenda that someone from the public wishes to speak about? Please let Brandy or Jana know, and there'll be time at the end. Then moving on is item 4 is the approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Fifth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 1st, 2023 meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
September 21st.
Yes, September 21st, 2023 meeting.
Ford moves.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And then let the record show that Liam Colleen is back in the room. Item 5B on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 9th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
Ford moves.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Abstain.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 on the agenda is commission consideration of ordinance number 23-26. It's a zoning map amendment for lots 2 through lots 5 of the Manzel Second Edition, for being rezoned from R1 to PUD. Brandy, will you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So this proposal for this property, which is the Mansell Second Edition, I'll pull up a map here so you guys can familiarize yourself, is before you today to be rezoned from R1 Single Family Residential to, which it is currently subdivided into 5 single-family lots, to rezone into PUD, Planned Unit Development. The PUD requires a minimum of 5 acres, which this property does meet that requirement at approximately 7.92 acres, about 8 acres. And if you recall, this was brought before Plan Commission and City Council earlier this year on March 9th. And at that time, it was petitioned to be rezoned CL Lake Commercial. And on March 9th, 2023, the Plan Commission recommended the rezone to City Council at a 5-2 vote, 5-4, 2 against. And then City Council on April 3rd, 2023 unanimously denied it. And for a lot of the reasons that we'll probably be hearing about tonight of the discussion with floodplain, wetlands, whatnot, which we'll touch on that. The property altogether was annexed into the city in 2018 as the R1 Single Family Residential. And we also, with the PUD, then we get into the specifics of what the project is proposing, which I'll point out some of those here. And the benefits of the PUD is that we are seeing exactly what is being proposed, and what is shown here is what the development will be, so there is not the anticipation of what it could be, which was an issue as well with the CL district, because there was some hesitancy with what the permitted uses in that district were when this was reviewed previously. So we have the PUD before us today. It's a mixed-use development of residential and residential storage. And there will be sportsman condos is what they're calling them in their PUD plan. Those are the buildings on the north side. Those will not exceed 35 feet in height. And there will be 15 units total for maximum density for the sportsman condos, 5 per building. And then the loft-style apartments on the south side. They will be one-bedroom lofts, 10 per building, and then one two-story single-family rental unit on the site as well. So with the PUD, those are, those densities are locked in is what they're proposing. The parking will meet the requirements for multifamily and single-family attached residential units for their respective type. Obviously, these buildings to the south will have to meet the multifamily because they would be considered multifamily as they are townhouses with shared walls. And then the single-family unit, that would be required to meet the single-family off-street parking requirement. And other things to note, so they are proposing that they would be willing to convey an easement for the recreational path if the city and DOT are open to that design, alternative design, and really just to create some individuality in this area and for people to be able to come off of the street and kind of, it's just more scenic. And then, but that would still be at the expense of the city project. The developer would just be donating the easement. And then as well as this other area where there's a tunnel or a culvert here that would allow for, it's something that was proposed in the Lake Compesca Master Plan for the fish conveyance underneath South Lake Drive. That is also just a proposal because the developer would not be installing that. It would be up to the city, but they're just showing the conceptual of what this area could be and what they are willing to allow the city to do if it is desired to do so. And also they do note that lot 3 will not be developed. And all of the area that has the bulk of the wetland within it will remain undeveloped. And otherwise, and then where their pond is proposed to be, there might be even some slight improvement to it. All of those things as far as floodplain regulations and the regulations of the Army Corps of Engineer for wetland fill placement, all of that, those regulations would need to be met upon building permit issuance. So with all of that information, I will stand by for questions.
Thank you, Brandy. In just a minute here, I will open the public hearing. I do know in the past when we've had items like this that have come before us multiple times, we've set a time limit to try to keep things moving and keep things from being repeated. I feel like that would probably be an appropriate thing to do tonight. I believe most people in this room are here for this item. So, you know, and to try to not repeat everything, I would like to try to set a 3-minute time limit. And also, you know, if I could, I'd like to ask for a show of hands for who's in favor and who's against this item, just so we have an idea in case not everyone here chooses to speak. So can I ask in the audience who here is in favor of this item and who is opposed? Okay. Thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask for anyone to come up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to help facilitate this, I would respectfully request you to instruct those that are proponents to testify first, and we hear all the proponent testimony, and then ask for opponent testimony after that.
Sounds good. I will ask for proponent testimony first.
Okay, so I think I was just speaking with some folks sitting behind me, but, I'm sorry, I'm Eric Scott with, in this case, agent of CAMSCO. And so here to speak on behalf of the property, Aaron Hansen, who lives across the street from here, and myself own the property together. And we are the, I don't know if sponsors is the right word, but we are the ones asking for this, and obviously for that reason, proponents of it as well. So one of the big things that there was a lot of concern on with our CL district application was that anything could happen on this property, gas stations, just everything that opens up to, that there's a lot of concern about. And so we decided to bring it back as a PUD. So at least all of you folks and the folks sitting behind us could see exactly what we were proposing to do. One of the reasons for the initial CL district is this plan wasn't fully developed. And for right now, we know there's a need and a desire for the sportsman's condos. And specifically for 5 of those, and that's where we wanted to start and see where it went from there. So now we've got a fully developed proposal, with the number of buildings and everything on it. But if the question comes up of, why not, why didn't we go with the PUD right away? Why, are we, switching? That's why we started where we started, and that's where we're at now. Let's see. So Sportsman's Condos along South Lake Drive, there's a lot of demand for that. A lot of the folks that live on South Lake Drive, as we hear, there's not a lot of parking space. There's not a lot of space for their toys. There's not a lot of space for guests or anybody else to park on those South Lake Drive lots. So a lot of those people want to get their things out of their driveways, out of their side yards, and get those off the road, and they'd like to have property across the road. Some of them, Aaron included, I think often has to park on South Lake Drive, would be able to get all of his vehicles off of the actual road. There's you park on that street. And so that's why there's a demand for this, and that's why that I believe it makes it a good area. And a lot of folks that aren't here that are proponents signed a previous, I did have some signatures when we were trying to zone CL. Didn't think it was necessary to circulate that petition again. But a lot of the folks that live right across the street are in favor of this and would like to buy some of the condos, sportsman's condos, so they can get their get their stuff off the street, get their stuff out of their driveway, make a little space for themselves on South Lake Drive there. Let's see. So,
There was a 3-minute click there. I mean, I guess that doesn't mean, though, we can't have them ask questions. So, I mean, that's just if the board has questions.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I will ask a quick question. So you said you had wants for 5 right now. So is your plan to start with 1 building, and then if that's successful, move on to the second and third? And
that is correct. That's the plan at this point. Again, as demand comes in, things change. It's never our intent to bait and switch, but we do. And again, we would be restricted to be able to build what's on this plan or ask permission to build anything else. But if the first sportsman's condos sell out immediately, we would probably go right onto those. I'm not prepared or ready, done a feasibility study on building the apartments, nor know what the demand is. So.
Okay. And could I have a follow-up question to that? On the one that you plan to build, do you have an idea of how much fill you're thinking you'll need to bring in?
No, but my engineer is here, and he knows precisely how much fill needs to be brought in. I do believe we would be, never mind.
Before we ask that, I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So you were talking about a single 2-story, single-family rental unit that would be made available on the property. How many bedrooms in that facility?
It's actually a 2-bedroom. What it is if everything goes as planned, the men sell the home where the single-family home that's already on the property is currently located right here. We would actually move that over to this area right here.
Then further, it also talks about restrictive covenants where you would allow up to more than 4 unrelated persons. I don't think that's allowable by the ordinance. When you read the definitions, that would conflict with the definition of a single family. I'm just calling that to everyone's attention, that I don't have a problem with that if that's what they want to do, but I think that's going to be more of an ordinance amendment and we can't do it by something of an administrative fiat from the board.
So I actually pointed or had that in my notes here too, but a PUD can propose things that are not in ordinance.
But we have a specific language in the ordinance that defines what a single family, what a family is. And so I think what he wants to do is okay, but and you could do it as part of the PUD, but it's going to take a subsequent ordinance amendment redefining. That's where I'm at with it. I mean, I'd be more than glad to have that conversation with the city attorney.
Yeah. If you guys recall too, with CACs, there were things that were not allowed in ordinance that we did allow with CACs, with their PUD, because that is basically your zoning is setting your district.
Based on the use is what the PUDs you can do, but you can't change definitions through a PUD action. There's case law on it, and like I said, I'd be more than glad to have that conversation. But I think moving forward, I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, that I don't have a problem with what you want to do, Eric, but I don't think it's the right way of doing it through a PUD amendment.
Do we need to pull this proposal and amend it?
No,
or
no,
how?
I think if we get to the point of making a motion, I will make that, I will make an amendment to the motion to approve.
Okay.
And in staff's review, we didn't find issue with it.
Mr.
We
Chairman,
can consult with our city attorney.
to Commissioner Kay's point, just for staff notes, Commissioner Case, could you expand on which definition it is that they're providing that are then meeting the intent of? If
I
you
can
could,
read
please,
it.
just for our notes.
I can read it.
We have communal living as a use.
The definition of family stipulates, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll paraphrase, that a family is no more than 3 unrelated individuals. However, it does have a reference to the R3 zone, and it does say that fraternities and sororities don't count. But it does say that you can't have more than 3 people living in a individual dwelling. I mean, I just read it before we came in, and I don't have it in front of me. But it does define what a family is, and it does have the number 3 and 4 in that. And so if we're going to create a PUD district and allow a use that's not allowed anywhere else in any other part of the ordinance, I don't think you can do that without actually, it conflicts with the definition of what a family is. And your other section of your ordinance says that you have to follow the most restrictive section of your ordinance, and that would be the definition. That's the legal argument.
He's not defining it, though. He's just saying that as far as occupying what he's calling the single-family rental unit.
I will save my dissertation on this until at the end.
We'll consult with our attorney.
I think that's where we should hang that topic. I think we know the size of the buildings and how many rooms there'll be, whether the number of occupancy might change by 1 per unit, but that can be discussed later.
I guess if I could just make one point, and maybe I'm not tracking with you, Commissioner Case, but he's calling it the use of, how'd you read that, Brandy? Something about a single.
The communal living, or
No,
that he's
What you just read.
more than 4 unrelated persons may be allowed to occupy the single-family rental unit.
Yeah, single-family rental, couldn't he just call it something else and he's meeting the intent then?
Well, I'm just saying.
That's what I was getting at.
I'm just saying, I'm just reading it what it says. It says,
Okay.
single family.
Gotcha.
When I read single family, a single family
Yeah.
structure by definition does not allow for more than 3 unrelated people
So
to live in
it could be as easy as calling it something else is what I was getting at.
Whatever the attorney would come up with that meets
Yeah.
muster, but it doesn't meet, it conflicts with your existing ordinance and code.
And the applicant's fine with making those amendments, but I'm not sure that we don't define single family, we define family.
Right, so let me just do the math. If I have a house and it's a single-family house, that means 1 family can reside in that house, which means no more than 3 unrelated people can be there.
Yeah, no, I get your point, Commissioner Case. We can leave it at that instead of beating a dead horse. I think it's just as simple as being renamed is what I was getting at.
Right.
Not call it a single-family usage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing it out and making sure the clarification is there so that
I don't want to approve something that gets jacked up later down the road when you get into some sort of potential legal issue
Sure.
over what is.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant while he's there? Go ahead.
Eric, what is the, okay, so I understand the fish canal, but then what is the finger that goes out into Toby Slough? What is that drawing? Is that?
It says a tunnel.
Yeah, the tunnel that that
Oh,
long, yeah, that. What is that? It says a tunnel.
let's get, oh,
Again, that's something Colin may be able to speak on. It's labeled in here, proposed channel in the area to connect the slough to Lake Kampesca.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, so right now, I believe and Colin DeYoung may be more qualified to speak on this than myself. Again, I believe coming from the Lake Kampesca master plan and some of the potential desires that they had at that time, which I think you'll read later, the water district may, that may no longer be something they even want to do. Colin, is this something maybe you speak to? Not Colin Paulson, but Colin DeYoung. Better you explain it than me. Than try to re-explain it.
Colin DeYoung with Austin Engineering. And yeah, we're proposing a channel to be excavated to connect, to allow the water from Toby Slough and Lake Kampesca to kind of normalize with each other. Because in that area, there is kind of a small berm that restricts, Toby Slough from getting into that wetland just north of there.
Thank you. And can you speak on how much fill will be needed for the first building?
We'd be looking at somewhere between 4 to 5 feet of fill at the most.
Chair, and is that across the entire lot, or is that just for the essentially two buildings, right? You've got the sheds and the condos?
Right. Majority of the fill will be, along the northern edge of the property, and then, along the southern edge. I would say down the middle, it's probably more, in the 2.5 to 3 feet range.
Is there any other questions for Colin while we have him?
How tall are the garages going to be, the sportsman garages, and how tall are the proposed apartments?
I guess that'd be a good question for Eric on that.
I think
both
that was in-
35 feet,
Yeah, 35 feet.
which is also what
both?
the
For both of
R1.
them?
Yes,
Oh, okay, thank you.
which is also what the maximum height for an R1 single-family residential district is too.
Brandy, is that wall height or peak?
Building height, which includes the peak.
Chair? So what about water drainage when you add that much fill? What's the plan for that? Where will it go?
We're proposing like a detention pond east of the buildings there. And then we're going to have a drainage swale and storm sewer down the middle of the parking area. So all the water that comes off the roofs, we'll catch it in that drainage swale and direct it to the east into that detention pond.
And the channel cut in possibly between Toby Slough and Lake Kampesca, will it have the capability to be closed? A valve in it, some sort of closure if for some reason there's contamination on one side or the other, or,
Certainly, a gate valve could be installed on that box culvert.
but there's not one in the plan now?
No, it's just conceptual.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
It's my understanding that the developer isn't constructing any of that. He's just only providing an easement in the event that the city or the state or some other entity wish to construct that. He's just providing the space. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
Mr. Chair, point of clarity, please. Are you talking the detention pond, Commissioner Kays? or
No, I'm talking the
actual
fish channel.
Passage, okay.
Fish channel.
Thank you.
I think it was the fish channel, the fishing dock, and there's something else in the report that stipulates that they're just not constructing it, but they're making it available.
Right, we're providing easements.
The conceptual public improvements, public parking, public fishing platform, public kayak launch, and box culvert for Fish Highway to connect Toby Slough to Lake Compesca are not intended to be installed by the developer. The developer is willing to provide easements for the installation, maintenance, and continued use for the public for these items. And that is within the PUD plan that is in your packets, page 14. And it goes on, it's at the end and it goes to page 15.
Any other questions for Colin? If not, is there any other proponents?
Hi, everyone. Colin Paulson. I'm a proponent for this. I first want to thank the board for their time and effort they put into all these decisions, but this one specifically. I wanted to start by saying I sat on the city council during that unanimous decision to deny this in the first place. And there's several reasons why it was denied at that time by the council. One, the CL district in general is still being fought over. There's no resolution to that at this time. And that was a big reason why, is that there's just a lot of discussion on not allowing those CL districts to come in at this time until there's more clarity on some of the uses. And another reason was the applicants didn't come up and speak at the council. But that was because they were going back to the drawing board, addressing a lot of the issues that were brought up by the public and by the planning commission and then the city council. And I applaud them for that. This plan is the result of that. A PUD is not probably the best option for continued zoning throughout our community. But when there's continual disagreement, as there is, especially around Lake Compesca, you're going to start getting more PUDs because it lays out a plan, addresses a lot of the issues or the concerns that are brought forward. And they did that with this plan, and that's why I'm here just telling you guys that, I mean, this lays out exactly what was discussed previously. And expanding access to this lake is probably our most important thing right now that we need to do to grow our community. There's other issues too, but expanding access is number one, and this is the first step towards that. I know traffic issues are a lot. I happen to be a transportation engineer in my past life, and I analyze traffic patterns quite a bit. And I can tell you that traffic is always a concern to the people that are constantly living there, but traffic patterns show that people don't go and come at the exact same time, especially when it's being used for sport use. So that should alleviate some of the traffic issues, but then an increased police force or enforcement in the area would help too. You know, I know overcrowding becomes a concern, but I don't think this overcrowds anything. It's across the street. It's not taking anyone or any R1 lots away or anything like that. And that's, I mean, that's honestly the next step for developers and stuff like that. So I just wanted to show my support for this, and hopefully the Plan Commission supports it just like they did before at the 5-2 vote. And then it goes back to the city council. So thank you.
Any other proponents?
Hello, Aaron Hansen, 1082 South Lake Drive. So I'm obviously a proponent for it. Be involved with Camsco with Eric Scott. Eric Scott and I, we got together at the time I became aware that this property was going to be put up for sale and likely would be developed into something. So I knew that something would be developed there, and I didn't know who it would be that would purchase it and how they would develop it. It was also at a time I had a desire to create some storage for myself, for my own things. I talked to all of my adjacent property owners that are neighbors, and they all had similar desires to create off-street storage for them as well. And I believe all but one of the adjacent property owners is interested. The one that's not interested is my next-door neighbor, and she has no need, but she doesn't oppose it. So in doing that, we wanted to do it in as responsible of a manner as what we could that was the least intrusive as possible. And in doing that, we wanted to, look at the Lake Compesca master plan and create easements to help facilitate that plan if the city so desired to do that. Also, the bike path has not been put in. I know that's a little bit of a hot button issue right now, that it's not done. Since it's not done, we thought that, hey, you know what? Let's provide an option, an easement to get that bike path off the road, provide scenery of wildlife, ducks and geese that are in Toby Slough on a regular basis. So those were some of our thoughts and what went into that. When doing this, and we looked at a lot of different options, and one of those options was, hey, this just could be developed into residential area. We could put houses in here. And we looked at that, that would actually create more impermeable area than what we have in a PUD. So we are allowing for less or more permeable area, and then, therefore also increasing water quality, habitat, et cetera. So those things are important to us. I guess ideally, we would do absolutely nothing, and that would be the best case for wildlife. That's the way that works, but I can't afford to just donate that for wildlife myself, and if I don't do it, then somebody will probably come in and do something with this area, and it might be more intrusive. It certainly could be more intrusive than what we're proposing. So this is a culmination of having community meeting, discussing with our neighbors, adjacent property owners, what their thoughts are, what they think it should look like. So it's never going to be, I guess, perfect for everyone concerned, but we're doing our best to try to put our best foot forward.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Is there any questions for Aaron? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other proponents?
My name is Mike Knutson. I live on South Lake Drive, just outside of Hidden Valley, approximately half a mile from this property. On Monday, I came and spoke to the City Council about my concern for a recent decision they made regarding properties on North Lake Drive, regarding the safety and integrity of our recreational path. When this proposal first came to our city council, I sent an email to Councilmember Bill Hauer expressing my concern about the past proposal for fear that there's going to be a lot of traffic right by that rec path if it is on the road. I am much more favorable about this plan for two reasons. One, it's coming to us as a PUD. We know what it is. It takes a lot more work, I think, on the part of the developers to put this all together. I certainly respect that. And two, I think that moving the rec path away from the road is a good step. I don't know that it's a perfect step. I don't know that there's a perfect step for the rec path in that area, but to me right now it seems like this is a positive step. I reserve the right, if you will, to listen tonight. Maybe I hear something differently that will cause me to reconsider that aspect. But as I look at it right now, I think there's a lot of positive that could happen from it. And again, as we move wherever the path goes, the devil will be in the details of the design of it. And I don't know those today, but in general, it looks pretty good. I have a couple more points I would make, but I'd let other folks maybe share their pros and cons, and if they are relevant, I would ask to be invited back. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Seeing none, I'll now ask for opponents.
Hi, my name is John Kessler, and I live at 938 South Lake Drive. For many years, I lived at 1030 South Lake Drive, which is just off the northeast corner of this proposal. And so I can speak from experience that this is a highly congested area. The houses that are on the lakeside are very close to the road. And, you know, obviously the setbacks for where the man caves will be, I'm sorry, for not sportsmen's condos. You know, obviously they comply, but because of the lack of space between the houses and the roads, these are going to be built literally feet from R1 residential housing. Now, I do have a concern, and actually this map shows it pretty well on the, I can't see the stuff, but there's that little finger of water there. That is a current culvert that comes across from Lake Compesca over to Toby Slough. And there's been some discussion back and forth whether that actually exists. It actually comes across from Mr. DeVille's property. And I have actually stood there and watched water come from Lake Compesca into Toby Slough in that spot. My concern is with that in general is that the proposed retention pond is right in that area. And I can, if Director Bonai, if you can address, we don't know if that is a protected wetland at this point, do we? We don't, yeah.
It may be, Brandy, you know better than I do, whether there's a jurisdictional determination on that one? No, there's not.
Okay. So if that were to be turned down and designated as a protected wetland, then where does the rest of the runoff go? Because as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can't have runoff into a body that is connected to bodies of water, in this case, Compesca and Toby Slough. That I don't expect an answer to that right now, but that is a concern. So the other concern is that, yes, this project does check the boxes as far as the 50% coverage in impervious surfaces. And there's also a 5-acre minimum requirement for a PUD. In this case, it checks the boxes, but it checks the boxes only because of Lot 5, which is the island and with the exception of where the house is going to go, the island and the path out to the island. So it kind of, you know, with all due respect for the developers, it kind of skirts around the reason that the 50% coverage and the 5 acres is to limit high density. So what we've got now is 2.7 acres of coverage on a usable portion of the land is about 4 acres. So that to me is also a concern.
Thank you. Do we have any, I hear Todd Kay's timer going off. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kessler or clarifications on any points he made? Thank you.
My name is Ron DeVille. I live at 1062 South Lake Drive. We've lived on that lake. We started, my dad, with a business since 1951. That went to the channel on the west side. Then he bought Moore's Resort, which took up the east side of the channel. And that's where we had about 1,200 feet of land, or frontage footage of land there. What I'm getting at is, I'm not supposed to bring this up, but if this all comes about, we're going to add about another 100 people or more in that area. The sheet I got is a little different than the one you got up there. I've got, this one here shows where the traffic comes out and where the traffic goes in, kind of, well, it's close to my area. And we've had problems with traffic. Anyway, in the summertime, we got a lot of traffic problems. Police, we don't see no police out there. So that was brought up. That could help things. But we don't have any police out there. If we do see one, it's you driving around during the day or something. But so that's my concern. You're going to put too many bodies in an area there, and they got talking about the people across the street. It all started with just fish with garages, is what it did, or what a couple of the people across the road wanted to get over there just to have some place to park their boats. Well, it cost too much. So the guys that I talked to backed out. I should have probably wrote some of this down. That culvert that goes through my property there, that's the inlet outlet for that, between the Toby Slough and the lake. That culvert handles water pretty good on all that. And if you start moving more water into that area, like you're going to put that, what the heck is that, a fish something there, you're gonna move more water when we have high water at Lake Compesca. You're going to have more water over there. We've got, there's been some summer times and all that. We get a big heavy rain in that, and then the lake moves water in it. We get water right up to the edge of the road just at those times. So that's a concern. These apartments here, to me, they're only 15 feet wide, 30 feet long. How do you call those apartments? I mean, there's 30 of them or something, or 36 of them, I believe, or maybe more. Nine to a unit, I think I saw there. That's pretty crowded. I don't know how you're going to handle that. Putting a boat and a vehicle, a truck inside of that garage, can't do it. That's the size of my garage in my side of on my property. It's about 15 feet wide, 30 feet long. And so there's just different little problems here that's going to come up. So if you okay it, one more thing, there won't be any waterfall. When you move in all those people, they leave. We've already lost a lot of them. They filled in, I don't know why Eric hasn't brought that up, they filled in a lot of dirt already. That there, they had a lot of geese coming in back in the spring of the year and raised their chicks there. No more, they're gone. So my 3 minutes are up. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Beasley. I've been here before. I do feel like Eric brought up bait and switch. I feel like this was the plan all along, that they had originally said they wanted condos, but I think this was the bigger plan all along. So I do think it was a bait and switch. Who wants to ride a bike through an apartment building complex? How scenic is that? I mean, they're giving you some things like, oh, we're going to save the bike path route. We're going to put it through our condos. The pedestrians walking across, They did purchase a lot across the lake from this. What's going to happen with those pedestrians when they're going back and forth? There's no safe walkway there. They're going to have to address that. If they put in boat launches there, or not a boat launch, but some docks and stuff, those people from those apartments are going to want to go back and forth safely. That's not been addressed. I think what John brought up, the 5-acre PUD, that is skirting the issue. That little land that jots out into that island, absolutely, they're considering that part of the PUD. It's unbuildable. I know they're not putting anything out there. They're not putting any of these condos out there or any of these apartments. Will those apartments be weekly rental? Airbnb? Then you have a lot of people coming and going. You have people washing their cars and boats. That retention pond's gonna have oil, gas, and everything in it going into the retention pond, and it's eventually gonna go into the lake in Toby Slough. That's not been addressed. I've had a real estate license for years. Currently, it's on ice. Any one of you that have a house that you put a lot of money into it, and that's gonna be your family home. You bought the property in an area where there probably wasn't an apartment building across the street. If you did, you knew it was there. These people that own houses there for the last 20 years like I have do not want an apartment building across the street from me. I do not want condensation. If I would have wanted that, that's where I would have bought a house. I like the natural area. I think the people at the state park like that there's some natural area there with Toby Slough. There are a lot of birds and stuff that I enjoy walking that road and listening to. I think this will change it. I do not want all that condensation of housing. Thank you.
Nancy, I have a question for you.
Oh, sure.
What are you talking about as far as boat launching?
I believe they own a lot across, and they're, right now, they don't have planned on putting docks in there, but I believe where are all these people gonna use their toys? When they have a garage underneath their house, or they have boats in that storage in the man caves, they're gonna wanna get out to the lake. They're not always gonna go to the state park, I don't believe. How are they gonna access the lake? Every one of those apartments, can they be used for Airbnb? I just thought of that while we were sitting here wondering about family units. They're gonna be one bedroom. One bedroom. With a loft on top. To me, that sounds like Airbnb. And if that's okay with you, I mean, I can't say, I don't know, but that's what I feel, so.
Mr. Chair, Brandy, the city doesn't currently regulate Airbnbs or short-term rentals. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Where is this lot across the lake? I mean, across, which one is it?
Excuse me, we had, it was, when we had Moore's Resort, there was two cabins.
you-
River, but they gotta tear them down. That's, where's it up there?
Right here.
No, wait. It's over, darn, it's, the Roadie's house is in there someplace.
1052.
And then it's east
Yeah.
or west of the Roadie's house. And between 10, no, it's, don't look at 1052.
is the one. 1052 is the property that I own. Aaron does not own that.
Yeah.
It's a different.
It's right where the fish go through.
To the east.
Well,
To the
that's
east of
probably
that.
where they're gonna put that, but those addresses.
Is that highlighted, Brandy, now? The blue?
Yes.
And what's the size of that lot?
I think that we need to bring some order to the public hearing.
I agree. I think, especially for the people online, they can only hear if you're speaking into a mic. So they're not catching most of this conversation anyway, which isn't fair to them. So I will get us back on track.
So that's the highlighted in the light blue, correct?
Yes.
And do you know the size of that lot? More or less?
So it is 16,000, nope, sorry.
I thought I checked it out today.
4,522 square feet. That is not included in this PUD plan.
Thank you, Brandy. I was
Right.
just going to point that out, Mr. Chairman, that that property has no relevance to this PUD application. We can speculate to death what the owners may or may not do with that, but it's not part of this PUD as far as the application is concerned.
Thank you.
Done.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Swarthout. I live on South Lake Drive also. I have two thoughts that I'd like you to consider as you're going through your deliberations on this. The first is the neighborhood that we're talking about is a small, single-family neighborhood. If you look up all the way up and down South Lake Drive, from Sandy Shore all the way to City Park, it's very similar. There's single-family dwellings, and when you look at on the non-lake side, it's single-family dwellings, or it's buildings that are being used by the lakeside owners. And this changes the characteristic of this neighborhood from a single-family to a high-density multifamily, which is more than a significant change when you're talking about a single-family neighborhood. The second consideration I have is when you look at the density that is being put in this particular spot, of all spots along South Lake Drive, it's probably one of the smallest land areas there are. If you look, and it creates a bottleneck. If you look at the South Lake Drive from the prop all the way to the City Park, that's a 25-mile-an-hour road, and it has considerably more room than what this is going to have, and this is a 30-mile-an-hour road. So I have a real concern with the safety that is being created with this kind of traffic. So those are my 2 points. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
My name is Lauren Berg. I live on the farm just east of this land. What I got a concern about is that channel, or you can call it a waterway, whatever. Who's got the responsibility of keeping that cleaned out? The Bergs did since in the 30s. Another thing I'd like to know is where the boundary is at on the south side of the proposed property. Did they go to the high water mark? Did they go out to the edge of the rushes where it's easy walking? Where is it at? So that's my concern. The road and snow removal is terrible. It's too small a road. Where are you going to put it at? Them trees along there that were, my brother tore the old trees out, planted new ones. They're going to be gone the way it looks to me in this photo right here.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
So you just have buildings facing the road, that's all you're going to have. I'm totally against it. There's other property around Lake Compasca, even close to there, that are much better suited. I'm not against development, don't get me wrong. If you want to put up 3 or 4 new houses down there, it's fine, but nothing like that. I'm totally against that.
My name is Steve Fate. I live on the lake. My main concern, I think, it seems like everybody's just glossing right over the main issue here. Lake Compesca for for 100 years has been the main public draw for Watertown, South Dakota. And it still is. but you're ignoring the fact that you've got a real environmental problem here and you're not getting proper studies done. You have people that say, well, what's going to happen with the channel and what's going to happen with the culvert? You need to get an environmental study done on this before you ruin the lake. Because if you're going to draw water out or push water in, you better know what you're doing. So that's the only comment I have.
Thank you to everyone who spoke. Is there anyone else?
When I'm looking at Susan Conrady, I live at the lake as well. When you look at the plan, and I do appreciate that a lot of the issues that were brought up last March, the company has tried to address. They have addressed the retention pond area to try to control the flooding. The fact that there's going to be so much traffic, and especially with the sportsman condos, lots of people backing out, that kind of thing. You couldn't have the walking path in front of there. It would be dangerous. I see an area that they're going to donate for a new culvert for the fish to spawn back and forth. But the problem that I see is they're inviting the city to spend a lot of money. The city's going to put in the culvert. The city's going to put in the walking path. The city is going to put in the retention pond. And one gentleman even suggested that if we just had more police out there, the traffic wouldn't be a problem. Taxpayer money goes to pay those policemen. So it's going to be the taxpayers that are going to be responsible for fixing a lot of the issues that were initially brought up by members of the community, lake residents, last March. That's up to everybody if they are comfortable doing that or not. I personally am not.
Mr. Chair, before Mr. Knudsen speaks, I would make sure that is there anybody else that hasn't had a chance to speak yet that wants to speak.
Great point. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak against this item?
He has a minute and a half left on his time if you want to give him a minute.
All right, I'll give him a minute and a half. Thanks, Todd, for keeping time.
First, I would say I understand the issues of density that are being raised here tonight and something for you to consider. The other thing that I would offer in here is that one piece of the proposal says the path will be moved to the back if the DOT does not object to it. I believe I read that in there, and I have a question. I don't know if there's any chance of that happening. But I think that this really does create a lot of congestion if the path is on the other side, on the road side, and there is a lot more density there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments the other night, too, Mr. Knudsen. Chair, I hate to call on you, Mark, but I see you back there and you raised your hand earlier that you're still opposed to this. Now that you've seen the PUD, and maybe you're not representing like the watershed district, maybe you're just representing yourself, but I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on it? Is it just a blanket disapproval?
Mark Roby, 346 North Lake Drive. I won't speak on behalf of the Compesca Water Project District. I am on that board. We did discuss it at our last meeting with Eric there, had a good conversation. It is, as Susan mentioned, it is improved, no doubt about it. We go back, I go back to, though still, we're developing the most precious parts of the lake, is seeing the most intensive development. And that concerns me when there's plenty of other high ground area around the lake. Certainly Eric doesn't own any of it, and that's a problem. But the city continues to encourage through their ordinances and actions to develop areas of the lake that shouldn't be developed. And that's my concern. The other thing we did comment to the city on is that given zebra mussel infestation, post the Compesca master plan, having that connection improve between the lake and Toby Slough just exacerbates that problem of zebra mussels taking over. And maybe they're already in Toby Slough, we don't know, but I think the city needs to step back and look at that access point now that we know the lake is infected. So those would be my comments.
Oh, I'm not going to let you go quite yet. You're a former planning commission member, right?
I am.
What, you know, and I share your frustration because, as so frequently happens, the applicants get up and say, well, if you don't let us do this, we're going to do this, and it's much worse, right? They present you the least worst option or a less worse option. You know, I look at it and I see, well, you got a bike trail or the rec trail. It solves, you know, personally a problem. When I've been on the bike trail, that's not a fun spot between that and the other spot over on by whatever the Marina Bay is, right? I mean, you're likely to get to join the spirit world if you're not lucky, unfortunately. You know, it looks like a decent plan on its face. We're a couple, looks like we're 30 feet from the wetlands in most of the places, 20 feet. They're not, doesn't look like they're really filling anything in. I mean, what do we do?
It is a dilemma. You know, we've noted to the city recently that the county, as a parallel, took action against the CAFO development and cut them back from 10 to 7,500 because of environmental issues. The
I was on that one. I was on that board too.
Okay, the city defers all of environmental issues to the state and to the feds, and doesn't acknowledge the precious nature of that resource for the city, the water quality, the water use, and so it's a tough one. But I can tell you, Toby Slough is a very big part of the ecosystem out there. It's low, it's flood storage, it ticks all the boxes. And while it's an improved plan, you know, why is the city allowing people to develop in areas that are, you know, show me another spot on the lake that's like that.
I share that feeling, but we turn this down. City council maybe listens to us this time, maybe they don't. Then they come in here and they fill it anyways, and then they build residential houses on it. And we haven't, you know, I'm with you on the environmental side. If that was part of our purview, yeah. But I mean, what do we do? That's my dilemma.
Understand.
Didn't mean to pick on you, Mark.
Nope. Anything else for me? Am I
Excused.
excused?
I'm gonna cut everyone off. I appreciate everyone, unless there's anyone who hasn't spoke. Feel free to come up if you haven't spoke yet. I do know that everyone who has spoke just about has wanted to say more, and I do recognize that on both the proponent and opponent side. Okay.
I'm on the phone.
Yeah, I hear you on the phone. Can you say your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Gretchen Rohde, and we own the property at 1046 South Lake Drive. There were several comments about that property. That's the one that is right next to where they're proposing, excuse me, the kayak launch. I'm not sure exactly what they would do there, but that's one of the biggest concerns that we have as an adjacent property owner. So just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that. There's a house there, and the bedrooms are right next to that lot. And, you know, I don't know exactly what would be planned. I don't know what the hours would be, how many people would be there. It really ruins the residential area, you know, right there, not to say, you know, ruining the residential area across, making what's across the street a residential, from residential to, you know, high density would be bad as well. Just a couple other things, and I won't take too long because most people have mentioned it, but the increased traffic is a concern for me. We've owned that property since the 70s, and it's always been, you know, cars going by pretty fast. There's not a lot of room for people to park. But even with the parking that they're looking at, it's way down, and it doesn't even look like there's a lot of parking there. I already mentioned changes to the character of the neighborhood, and people have talked about that in the past, you know, on this call, about the high density. Just kind of doing a computation of, you know, the parking spaces and people coming in. You know, at the highest, it could be like 150 cars, you know, maybe down to 75. As people mentioned, you know, backing in, you know, on a couple access points to the property, it just seems like you're adding a ton of traffic to an already congested area. And then just lastly, you know, people have mentioned it too, the changes to the wetland and the ecosystem, you know, that really is a special place. As somebody mentioned, I remember, you know, the birds, seeing the cattails, and just seeing the beauty of it and realizing how important it is, as people have mentioned, just to the overall ecosystem of Kempesca, and would hate to see that ruined. So those are my points. I just wanted to make sure that I covered those.
Thank you for those comments, and I will let you do a clarification.
Susan Conrady. I just want to point out, I did indicate that they had made improvements to their plan. However, don't forget about what the second part of my comment was. They're inviting the city to make these improvements. They're inviting the city to put the culvert in for the fish. They're inviting the city to put in the very long and windy and expensive walking path. So it will be the taxpayers that pay for the improvements to this plan, not the developer.
Thank you. I do appreciate all the comments, and I know a lot of people were cut short, and I appreciate everyone working with us on that as well. There was a lot of really good comments brought up, you know, and I don't know if I know the answers to all of them. You know, I do believe I think I know a few, and I'll try to answer some. I do believe and I should know this, I'm on the DOT, I work for the DOT. I do believe the state is going to put a trail over there, so I think that is in the works already. I don't know my timeframes on when that was going to be, so I do think taxpayers are already going to pay for a trail. It might be a little bit longer, which if approved, the state might pick that up, or they might ask the city or developer to do that. I don't know that answer at this time. So I just wanted to make that point known, since I should be the DOT representative here. But any other questions or?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could we get the applicant and their engineer up here? There might be a few technical questions that were brought up during the testimony that some of us might want to ask them. Okay, I want to ask, but some of. So the testimony was brought up about we're bringing in a lot of fill, and you said something. I just want to make sure I clarify. You said that 4 to 5 feet of fill is going to be necessary for the first building, and was that going to be for the remainder of the? I just want clarification on that map. I mean, are we taking 5 feet all the way out to the red line to the south?
No, what we're proposing is kind of this orange line here. That's a monster block retaining wall. And the reason we need that is all these buildings, we have to have the finished floor, 1 foot above the base flood elevation.
Right.
So that's where that 4 to 5 feet of fill comes into play.
So the other question that was brought up, or comment that was brought up, had to do with that channel, piece of channel that testimony stated that that was going to be incorporated into the retention pond. Would you just address those comments that were made?
Sure. Yeah, I guess this is the existing channel, and I believe that outlet pipe is somewhere in here. And so what we would end up doing is expanding on that channel to the west, to create more volume for our stormwater detention and water quality. And then we would utilize that outlet pipe as our control structure within the detention pond.
So the water that's generated from the site would then theoretically could be commingled with natural waters going back and forth between Toby and the lake, or no?
Correct. Yep.
It would be.
Yep.
And then the other question that was, or comment that was brought up, had to deal with, boat washings and solvents and oils and mussels and, oh my, different things. How do you propose addressing any of those, at least at this point, perceived environmental issues?
Well, I'm assuming, the sportsman condos within the garages, they're going to have what are they called? Like the.
You have floor drains in
Yeah.
all of these? Are there
Cracks.
going to be floor drains in the apartments, the apartment loft and garages?
What was that?
Will there be floor drains in the loft apartment garages?
I believe so.
Correct.
Are you going to be, within your covenants, allowing for boat washings to occur in the common area of the street? Eric, have you thought about that?
Had not considered that. It's the, yeah.
Other question that was brought up or comment that was brought up, they talked about the condo apartments, the 30 units with 30 bedrooms. What do you anticipate being the, I won't go down the length of stay because I don't think it's appropriate because we don't regulate short term. So I'm looking at getting back to the number of people that would be staying either on a short-term or long-term basis in those apartment flats with a single bedroom. Are you thinking those are 10 people living there? Are those 2 people living there?
I mean, I think it would be very difficult to fit 10 people in there. I do appreciate the question, and I don't know if I got a clock ticking on me right now, but.
No, you don't. This is just this is given to.
I might take this a little bit beyond the question, but I have always worked to operate with transparency and integrity. So I take a little bit of an exception to some comments that have been made. But in that spirit, I do want to clarify or let this board know that's going to make these decisions is that if we are allowed to do so, it is likely that those could be VRBOs. We may sell them as condos. There's a lot of people that want vacation homes. Even if they're condos, they can be VRBOs. So.
Can you tell me what VRBO is?
Yep, Airbnb, vacation rental by owner, nightly stays, weekly stays, monthly stays. And yeah, I think, and just so a couple other points of clarification. What they're talking about at 1052 South Lake Drive, that's a property that we were going to develop. We're denied a permit or a variance on. It's a non-buildable lot, and the structures that are there are not worth a lot. Again, there's a lot of stuff we do. We have ideas, we have visions. We're never quite sure where it's going to go or what we're going to be permitted to do or what the market is going to demand. So the thought there, though, is that we could put in a few extra docks. It's like it's 100 foot wide, so I think it would be 5 to 8 docks. Eventually, we could lease those docks just like a marina. There'd only be very few of them. This is very close to Sandy Shores, so most people that would be there, sportsmen's condos, hunters, fishermen, sportsmen, would likely access through Sandy Shores. Same with the other apartments. The culvert across the road and the bike trail, I do know there's some process with the bike trail. We wanted to offer this. I know Jared Mansell said at one point the city or somebody asked him if he would be interested in letting them do that because it seemed like a better route. He said, no way. When we put this together, I think it'd be a nice little amenity around the back there. It'd be scenic along Toby Slough for people riding their bikes. It'd get them off South Lake Drive. And so we offered that up. We do not intend to pay for that improvement as the city or the state. That's already in the works, and I think it may be too late to divert that as it is. So it may happen, it may not, I don't know. Same thing with the culvert. That's something that's been in the vision in Lake Kampesca watershed districts. I'm sorry, not the water districts, may have been, but it was part of the Lake Kampesca master plan. And so, while we are saying if the public intends or would like to improve that for the public good, that we would grant the easements, that we would be a party to that, we'd be amenable to it. But we're not trying to get somebody to pay for something that we don't want to pay for. That's for our, just solely for our benefit. So I just want to make those clarifications and make sure we're as transparent as we possibly can be.
And one last comment, there were some questions about coming access. The only access points coming into the property are those 2 that are identified. No one's backing out onto South Lake Drive or entering those man caves, sport utilities from, that's everything's on the interior, correct?
Correct. There's some internal drives, so they wouldn't be backing out onto South Lake Drive.
Right.
That's absolutely correct.
Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, I have one question. Now, it's my understanding what Colin was saying was where that culvert is that goes past Ron DeVille's house, that's going to be cut off, and then that's just proposed for the city to do that drainage ditch. Are you guys going to leave that open until the city improves that? Or are you just going to cut it off and then there's no access between Toby and Kempeska?
No, we're leaving that existing pipe the way it is.
Oh,
No,
okay.
we would just be utilizing that as the outlet structure for the detention pond. So that pipe's gonna stay whether the fish highway goes through or not.
Okay, and then also Lot 1 is not part of this. What's that going to be used for?
Don't know yet.
That's
I think
still
it's likely
just
that
a
it would be
R1?
sold to somebody else that may live across the street, or we may build a home on it.
Okay.
Why didn't you use it as part of the PUD?
Not necessarily, we don't necessarily, it wasn't necessary, and we don't necessarily know what we're gonna do with it. So, again, sometimes we have to pivot. I like to keep my options open.
Okay. The lot that you own on the lakeside, I guess that's kind of a surprise to me. I guess when it was mentioned that docks and boats storage, for your units to use, being in the water and swimming when you have boats coming in a dock landing is kind of dangerous. I get nervous all the time at City Park watching people come in over there, but most people swim to the south. You are going to do this right between two cabins or two lake homes. You're going to buoy it out 100 feet?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I don't mean to cut you off, Rhonda,
Well,
but I don't know if it's germane to
No.
talking about something that's not part of the
He told me he was
PUD.
being transparent, Todd.
Right, but I
And
don't
this
think it's
was-
germane to the PUD.
It isn't part of the PUD. That's my point. It was brought as a surprise to me that, and it makes perfect sense that you would need that. But again, we're not being transparent. That's not being transparent to me.
And personally, I think it is germane, because if you look at our ordinances, the purpose of the zoning ordinance, number 2 is to foster a harmonious, convenient, workable relationship among land uses. And that would be talking about fostering a harmonious, workable, convenient relationship between the PUD and that land use.
I have another question on the parking. Now, on each one of these one-bedroom units, the only parking for them is going to be in the garage, the lowest level, correct?
Correct, and I suppose in front of the garage as well.
In
if
front
they
of the
need-
garage, too?
If they needed it.
Okay.
There are a few additional spots on the west end, but of course, the first building we build would be one of the sportsman's condos that doesn't.
Is there going to be living in the sportsman condos at all, or that's just going to be like a big garage, no bathroom, no kitchen, no living?
We would like to be able to do those consistent, or the intent is to do it, I think, consistent to with, I don't know what addition it is, where Munger's is, we might need Brandy here, but that they could put a living quarters in there and have a loft or something in there where vacation home for them or
So
whatever
how
it might
much
be.
parking is going to be for each one of them units?
None is required. How much parking is going to be need? I mean, if it's they're 50-foot long, they'd be anywhere from 30 to 60 feet wide, and they're likely going to be used as garages. So most of the parking would be inside, and then they would be able to park in front of them.
And then have their living quarters in amongst the vehicles?
Mr. Chair, may I ask staff a question? Heath or Brandy or the building official, if they were to have living quarters in there, they would have to have a firewall separating bedrooms and those things from the garage area?
Yeah, correct, and from the separate units, I don't know, Reed, if you want to expand on that any, or the fire marshal? Please use a mic if you could, Building official Reed Peterson, everybody.
There is required separation between garage and dwelling unit.
And when you say required separation, again, is that a firewall? Is that a, help a layperson understand?
Type X sheetrock needs to go from the foundation to the roof line, sheeting above.
Thank you, sir. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Eric, I guess I have a couple of questions for you on the design. And I don't know how conceptual this is, but help me with the spacing so that if we start with phase one, it says you've got 5 sportsman's condos, and I believe you just said they'd be roughly either 30 by 50, 30 feet wide. I'm going to say kind of east to west, 50 feet deep. Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, correct. I think they could be anywhere from, we've got that first building, we've got some people we've been working with, some that want smaller spaces, maybe even as little as 24 feet wide, and then 50 to 60 foot in depth.
And so then from that sportsman's condos to the, what are you calling them? The single residence or single loft apartments, how many feet, if you will, between those two structures?
Looks like we're showing 60 feet.
And that would all be hard surface?
Correct.
And then what's the roughly size of those with depth of the loft apartments or loft condos? I don't know what how.
We're showing 30 by about 155.
So 155 deep by 30 wide.
Yeah.
And that's, again, primarily, mostly garage and living, one bedroom apartment above that garage, for lack of a better description.
Yeah, so the concept we've used, that we built some apartments on Willow Creek Drive. Garage on the main level. Back behind that is a set of stairs that goes up to a kitchen, living room, bathroom. And then it goes up to a loft that's kind of half in the trusses or the roof. And that's kind of the concept that we intend here. Again, this isn't, I don't know how far I need to take these plans to show, I can do that, but I don't know how, I can bring all of those plans. I don't, for the PUD if you want to see more.
I guess I'm just kind of looking at it. So I don't know, Brandy, could you bring up GIS? So over on South Lake Drive, closer to the country club, there's some similar, to me, condos in that area. I don't know if GIS is updated enough. Can we see the rendering of those?
Yep.
Correct. So there's some, and again, that whole structure there. So are those buildings similar to what we expect to see at the sportsman's condos?
The difference is that I would say yes, except the difference is these do not allow for living quarters within them. So what they're proposing for the sportsman condos would allow for living quarters, so they would have the proper fire protection, or they would size them accordingly, have a sprinkler system. And as Mungers was referenced prior, so the south building allows for living quarters within those as a permanent residence, and because those are sprinklered. They have the fire suppression system, so.
And so this development, was this also CL, or what zoning is this?
This was CL, light commercial.
And so help me with where's our 50% green space?
So the entire property includes these lots, the detention lot, and then as well as this. So that entire area is zone PUD, and I just did this calculation like 2 weeks ago, so I'm confident that each lot where the reserve is happening and where the Prairie Winds condos are located the entire area is under 50% of coverage.
And so, again, with these storage units, are they roughly that 30 by 50? I mean, are they roughly the same size of what Eric's proposing on the Mansell addition?
I guess I'm
So
wondering
the
relevance.
I'm just, in my mind, are those other buildings roughly 30 by 50 or 30 by 60 by the
So,
Prairie Winds?
okay. I think they're,
And it's kind of a density question. Are they, I don't know
okay,
if
I'm
those
just
are.
gonna get what, Eric, so you're gonna do 5 units per building, and each one is going to be,
I think each building's 180 foot long. Well,
yeah,
180, 178, and then 120 is the last one.
okay, and then 58 feet in depth. So then when we look at here again, these are tapered down, but at the 200, so it will be quite similar.
Correct. So, and then the I'm going to say condos across to the south of that, those would be somewhat of similar size or design of what he's proposing on the Mansell property?
Sorry.
The property to the south there's like condos or townhouses. Are those similar in design or concept of what we're proposing on the Mansell property?
No, those are, these are, I would say, these are single, the condos on here are single level living, very similar to some twin homes we've built, patio home style living. So these are those are condos that'll be for sale right here.
Sure.
Scale, those are, well, and you're talking about these, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. This building would be much deeper this way, I think 50 or 60 feet if you're trying to gain scale.
Correct.
And then I would point out that these up here, they're back to back, so this building is 100 foot, 102 foot going east to west.
Correct. So it's whatever, 102 by, what did Brandy say, 200?
Correct.
Gotcha. So my frustration with this is we look at this, when you drive and you look at all the hard surface and concrete, and I guess that, to me, this isn't the spirit that we've developed the CL district in. And so it's kind of like we've done a workaround of, yeah, we've got the 50% green space, but it's all slough and it's not very aesthetically pleasing to me.
Well, I don't think it was just a slough. It looks like it includes one of the holes on the golf course.
And I mean, I guess my frustration is it looks like we're trying to somewhat duplicate this in the Mansell property, and it gives me a little heartburn.
Well, it's not the intent to duplicate this. It's, I mean, again, I guess it's being presented on exactly what we intend to build with the PUD and not the CL. So it is, 100%. I did not develop this property either. I purchased I'd like to point that out because I think that is important. I did not develop that property. I bought the property between the contractor shops and the golf course to build some twin townhomes.
Right. And I guess my thing is, when I look at this and I look at what you've proposed, and we've got all concrete from the sportsman's unit to the proposed loft apartments, I guess when we talk about aesthetics and the beauty of the lake, to me, I think we're losing again, a lot of time was spent on that CL district, and I don't, in my opinion, this isn't what we were trying to achieve.
Mr. Chair, quick question, point of clarification with what Jason just said. The design of this PUD from a green space perspective is following the CL zone or no?
Yes, it is. It's actually exceeding it. Again, in your packets, it explains the lot coverage of impervious surfaces shall not exceed 50%. Estimated impervious surfacing for this design is 2.7 acres. The total project area is 7.92 acres, which the allowable impervious surfacing for the CL district would be 3.96 acres. So they're about an acre and a quarter less impervious than what would be allowed in the CL.
Mr. Chair, did we ever get a definition in our ordinances for impervious? We had that issue with the point. And what is it, Brandy?
We changed it. It's lot coverage. So lot coverage is anything with the pavement, the rooftops, and whatnot. I can pull up it just to read it to you guys. Lot coverage, that portion of a lot covered with structures and hard surfaces such as parking, loading, and storage.
So it no longer includes the water surface.
No, and that was always questionable if it ever did, but other people had opinions of what impervious meant.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second from the board for discussion.
I would make a motion to recommend approval to the city council to adopt the planned unit development as proposed with one exception. The reference to 4 people living in a single-family dwelling in the covenant needs to change to referencing the communal living standard, which is more than 4 but no less, or more than 4 but no more than 6, I think is what the definition says for communal living in the ordinance. So it would be a maximum of 6 in my recommendation to be consistent with code.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second for discussion.
We have a motion and a second. One thing I would like to point out are, what I'm going to say, I guess, these are always really tough. They just are. You know, our ordinances are, I know they're tough. We try to do a 50% lot coverage. We still end up with a lot of concrete. But on the flip side to that, we also have 3 detention ponds on this, where if there are single-family lots, there'd be less on each, but no detention for water quality. And I do think when we go through a PUD, we know at least what the buildings will be, what the concrete will be. That we think that's all laid out in front of us, and we know to the best of our ability at this stage what it'll be. My comments.
Mr. Chair? I agree with you, Jason, on the aesthetic and what the intent of something was. I'm wondering, do we have any sort of a population density study for the R1 on the lake side of the on the lake side for the lake, so we know what kind of population density per acre we have in R1 around the lake? Or houses, how many houses per acre? We don't.
No,
Okay,
not off the top of my head.
all right. I struggled, Liam, as you mentioned, as you asked Mr. Roby, and I went back to our Bible, the city ordinances, and I found several things that helped me make my decision. One is in the purpose of zoning, which is number 5, to prevent excessive population densities and overcrowding of the land with structures. I'm pretty sure we don't have definitions for that, since excessive population densities and overcrowding of the land, I guess that's subjective for each person to decide. And also in the chapter 21.38, the PUD Planned Unit Development Ordinance, under application and modification powers, the last sentence states, the last half of it, and provided that such uses are planned so as to assure that they will not materially alter the existing character of the neighborhood. Assure that they will not materially alter the existing character of the neighborhood. And I guess I struggle with going to this piece of property, 5 acres essentially, that was originally zoned as R1 with 4 units on there, to go to PUD with 46. To me, that is excessive population density, overcrowding of the land with structures, and I do not believe there's any assurance in 46 units compared to 4 that that will not materially alter the existing character of the neighborhood, all of which is R1, single family. I know that when we had the discussion last week on the North Lake Drive accesses, there was some concern maybe with some council people that perhaps we didn't have all the information or we weren't quite sure what we were doing, and that's why I took the time to research these ordinances and to really see how the PUD ordinance applies to this situation and how the criteria why zoning ordinances and what their objectives are applies to this situation. So I welcome anybody else's comments on that.
Mr. Chair, I agree with you, Diana. When this was annexed in, I was a part of that, and when it was annexed into the city, it was R1. R1, 5 lots, yep. I have no problem bringing in 5 lots along that lake where it is narrow, where it is already congested. Had I known, had this PUD come in front of me that day to annex it in as this PUD, I would have said no. I would not voted to annex it in as this. So my responsibility on this board, I feel, is to represent the public. That's why it was important to me to know how many people here, how many people watching, how many people on the phone are for this project. Yeah, there's bits and pieces. We're all for development. We're all for seeing Watertown grow. But this lake is our biggest asset. Brookings would kill to have this lake. And we just cannot seem to muddle it up at every opportunity. And that's how I feel this project is. And my responsibility is to the public, and the public that was here is not for this project, so therefore, that's where I stand.
It was R1 when it was brought in, but I could see where, as we get closer to the highway, we would transition to a higher density and then commercial. Obviously, there won't be commercial between here and 212 because there's Toby Slough, but if there was land there, we would want R1, higher density, commercial. I mean, that's how we transition with zoning. So to say one side's R1, the other side has to be. I don't know if I agree with that. I think materially, this is residential zoning, and materially, it still is residential zoning with this being approved.
And I also go back to when we sat down and talked about commercial lake zoning, and we went through that period of time where this proposed development would have met the criteria of the CL that we did. They floated the CL, powers that be said that they weren't going to do the CL. So they come back and said, well, we're going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. And we're still going to exceed the CL requirements that we as a planning commission have identified an area around the lake. Whether that's appropriate or not, that's what the rule is. If you want to go back to what the rules are we've identified a 1/4 mile swath all the way around the lake that's okay for commercial lake development, which is a different density than the R1 development. And the only reason this lake is zoned R1 is because that's what they only had in 1974 when they got annexed into the city of Watertown. We've got uses that are in the R1 zone that aren't compliant with R1 zoning out there. We have lots that don't meet R1 zoning in what we call standard part of the city of Watertown. It's two different bodies. And we don't have a good fix. So if we're going to hold the Bible standard to an R1 zoning that a large share of the lake doesn't even meet the minimum requirements from a land area, setbacks, those types of things, because that's where we see a lot of variance requests coming anyway. So I don't know if I buy into that argument that we are being inconsistent with the zoning. I think we're probably being more consistent with the land use plan, the master Lake Compesca plan that's been brought into it. I think the comment that was brought up, if I've got 4 or 5 acres that, I could put 10 to 12 houses out there if I can make it fit right. And there is no retention on, the environmental aspect of that. I think if they're going to try to offer opportunities for the city to build those improvements that were identified in the plan, I think that's a good thing as well. The master trail plan that was developed in 2004 and again in 2012, this is consistent with what's going on with what they're doing there as well. So I think a lot of the things that are in what they're proposing are consistent with previous plans, and I'm speaking from 30 years of experience as a practitioner, a policymaker, and now a policy decider. And so I'm going to support this because I supported it when it first came around as CL. And this is a better plan than it was then. I think there's more thought that's gone into it, and I'm just being consistent with my previous decision. So that's where I'm at.
Randy, I see you turned the zoning on. I see there's a bunch of lots that are already R3, so I guess there's already a potential that apartments could be built there. What would the allowable number of units be for one of those lots without having to come before this board? And just
Or if I came in and took out the whole thing and I bought the whole frontage, tore every single family house out there, how many people could live in that area?
No, I got that. So but before I do that calculation, because I have a calculation up in my calculator right now. So these lots that I highlighted that are in blue, as the more developable land to the south, if it were zoned R1, because as far as the side, like these are very large lots. So the fact that they would stay 5 single-family residential lots is highly unlikely. But these could be subdivided at the minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet. There could be 20 lots in this, just within this area. And you can see that when you look at the difference of the lots that are developed along the lakeside, just with the sizing of them. Now, if we find my measure here.
Brandy, there's a map here that says those are R1 in our packet.
Brandy, do your numbers include street and other improvements to get to those 20 lots?
No. So it would, but if they're doing a private street, that's just maximum density. I'm sorry, when we do calculations, we don't take into consideration.
times it by 0.75, we would get impervious for street, so about 18 instead of 24.
20 is what I
It'd
said.
be 18
Or
instead of
15
40.
instead of 20.
Okay. So, and then this area here, we're at 80,349. And if they were 1-bedroom units, there could be 61 units within this, but and that's maximum. So you're still gonna need your off-street parking requirements and setbacks, whatnot. 80%, only 80% of the lot can have coverage.
That's 80% on that side, whereas this side, what's being proposed is less than 50.
Yep.
I'll try to keep my comments brief. We've been here a long time. I just want to reiterate kind of what Mark and I discussed. My frustration has always been that with these is, okay, we turn it down, but what happens next, right? They build 5 McMansions and they've got 80% lot coverage or something like that, or they build 6 of them and then there's 6 ingress egresses as opposed to 2. I am less concerned about congestion. I understand, and I heard that from everyone, but I think that what you're going to see is probably a lot of short-term stuff. People coming and going. I understand that doesn't sound very appealing, but having seen these vacation areas in different places, having traveled quite a bit, having lived in more dense places, that doesn't concern me as much. What concerns me is the environmental aspect, the lot coverage aspect, and the general functionality of it. And I think that while if the choice were do nothing or this, sure, maybe I would go with do nothing, but I don't think that's the choice, unfortunately. And it's a poor way to make decisions as a community, but that's how we do it, is what else happens if we don't do this. Seems like the least worst option to me. Seems like a halfway decent option, all in all, that takes into a fair amount of the concerns. And I think overall, I mean, I plan to vote for it, but I just wanted to state that, like, as long as they're not destroying the wetlands and we've got retention, right? If we're doing R1, they don't have to do any of that. That's the alternative here. And that's what happens if we turn it down. Possibly.
One final comment on your comment, Liam. We voted R1 coming in, and I don't remember any of this conversation of worried about water. At that point, we weren't worried about 5 roofs dropping water.
It was a single lot at that time owned by one dude.
No.
And I didn't,
Now, when it came in, it was divided into 5 lots, R1s.
You didn't have a CL option when it came in at R1.
No, it was
well,
brought in as at R1.
maybe we made a mistake, whatever it was, 4 years ago when we annexed it, 5 years. I don't even remember. I was on it, but I don't know.
Did make a mistake. It's a slough. We should have not decided to build on it.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, the reason we annexed it is because we wanted to control the jurisdiction, because at the time it had a buildable right, whether it was in the city or the county, and we wanted to have our rules govern, which have water quality controls, and, as we see the pond. So, I mean, it had a buildable right before we took it. Like Liam said, something.
I agree. And it came in as the least intrusive that it could have, R1. We started at baby step.
But if the CL district would have been there, it might have came in as CL. We didn't have CL at the time.
Then I would have voted against it at that point.
Right, but I'm just saying there's a lot of ifs, ands, and whats and buts.
I understand, but I'm saying my original vote was based on R1. All my decision, all my clarity was R1.
Well-
And to your point of being in control of it and instead of having, joint jurisdictions and whatnot. So I'm just saying, it's no different than our other PUD. Yeah. We're throwing PUDs and mixing it with residential. Residential, that these people were there.
Brandy,
And now we have PUD.
what was the vote last March?
5-2.
5 in favor, 2 against.
Yep.
I don't think anything has changed substantively since that decision of 5-2 then. I think the plan is better than it was then, and that's why I'm still supporting it, and that's where I'm at. And I think if the 5 people that voted in favor for it last time, it should be obvious to them that this is a better plan than it was then, unless something has drastically changed in you internally.
It was a good discussion. We should probably vote and go home.
We have a motion, we have a second. See no further discussion. Brandy, can we take a roll call vote?
Yes. Brink.
Yes.
Oletsky.
No.
Cohen.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson.
No.
Hanson.
With a vote of 3 yeses, 4 noes, the motion fails. Moving on the agenda, item 7 is open public comment.
Mr. Chair, we should just make a note that the motion is to recommend not approving, so it will still go to the city council, and the city council has final disposition of this item.
Yeah, I was going to clarify that it's not, it didn't fail, that it still will go forward, and the council will have the decision of a superseding vote if it is to be approved. Because Plan Commission is just recommending.
Any public comment? Seeing none, I see we have one item of new business. The 24 schedule.
Yes. This is just for your information for 2024. We're already almost there.
I'd like to propose a change to July.
Okay.
I'd second that.
I think that July 3rd at noon, isn't it very practical? And we could maybe move that to the 11th and move the 18th to the 25th.
So, hold on one second. I'm going to ask that if the crowd could step outside, maybe. Would you guys mind stepping out if you want to have a discussion while we just finish up the meeting, please? It gets a little distracting. We did look at that, Diana, and the issue with it is it doesn't save us anything if we adjust it like that, because we still, like, the idea would be that all of the items would be able to go forward on the July 15th city council meeting. But if we had it on the 11th, we wouldn't be able to get the items turned around in time for when the council agenda needs to be posted.
Could we do it on the 2nd?
Yeah, we could do it any day that week.
Well, or even the 1st. I mean, the 3rd, it won't happen.
Yeah, you
won't have a quorum.
Yeah, and noon
Guys, it's only Wednesday. Can we hold on? Thursday at least?
The 4th on a Thursday and Kransberg goes on this Friday, the day off, it's going to be.
Goodness. So is the whole week, Independence Week.
We love America.
That was our idea of putting it at 12:15. If people were like wanting to take a half day, we can do the 2nd.
Thanks.
I really doubt that you'll have a quorum on the 3rd.
Just stating the obvious, right?
Right.
You guys. All right. The 2nd. And
Okay.
should we do
4:15.
12:15? 4:15 is fine? Okay. I didn't know if maybe everyone wanted to take off on Tuesday afternoon.
So committed to our jobs to do a noon meeting.
For your job in the summertime.
So it's the 2nd at the regular time.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Any old business? Any
No.
reason to go to executive session?
Do you have announcements yet, or do we already pass those?
I was kind of
think
going
we-
quick. Go
Yeah.
for it.
One quick announcement. I got an announcement to make as far as staffing is concerned. And some of you may or may not be aware, we've been seeking to hire a city engineer, in which case that position would be struck from my title. My title has also recently evolved, along with a couple others within the city. And regarding the city engineer search, we've done an extensive search, and it turns out we didn't have to look much further than the office next to me upstairs. And I'd like to just introduce Justin Peterson as the new city engineer, who has been the acting city engineer from time to time and has been serving as the assistant city engineer for over three years now, roughly. So Justin will continue to work in tandem with Brandy, and the structure of the public works structure is not changing at all. Both community development and engineering still report to the public works director, which is still part of my title. So.
And what is your new Grand Poobah title?
So my title is changed to assistant city manager / public works director.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Kays.
Good for you. So,
Grand Poobah?
all right. Well, what better note than that to adjourn on? Congratulations to both of you. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.